Welcome to Week 2 Learning, Day 2. Performance task. I will need to be able to identify and explain the theme of a story. Also, I will need to be able to use text evidence to support my answer and elaborate more specific details. In addition, I will need to be able to compare and contrast two different texts or themes. Finally, I will need to be able to identify first and third person point of view within a text. I will need to be able to explain my answer by giving key words and evidence from the text to support my answer. Words to know, or focus words: yanked, feast, streak, model, studio, ruined, schedule, concerned, smeared, glorious, passenger, apartment, newspaper, market, biscuits. Day 2, essential questions. The focus for today's learning. What does theme mean, and how can I identify and explain what it is? How can I identify theme within a text? A video clip from Brain Pop Jr., 6 minutes and 2 seconds long. Please take a few moments to watch and learn from the video and soak in some ideas of what theme is and how can we apply it to our lesson in our class today.
Then visit brainpop.com for much more. I'll take the R2 unit. Come on, Moby, how many different takes do you need? No, I don't want to switch roles. Dear Tim and Moby, how do I figure out the theme of a story? And why is finding the theme so important anyway? From Bob A. Thanks for the questions, Bob. A theme is a central message or idea woven into the action of a story. Themes give a story meaning by linking the fictional world with our own. They comment on issues from our everyday lives and from the wider culture. They're a huge part of what makes films and literature so fascinating. If you've ever read a fable, you already know a simple type of theme. Fables always include a moral, a lesson about life. Take the tortoise and the hare. The hare is always bragging about how fast he is, so the tortoise challenges him to a race. The hare is so confident, he stops to take a nap halfway through. Slowly, but surely, the tortoise passes the hare and wins. It might seem like the story is all about speed and running. The larger message is that patience and determination pay off. The race is used to communicate a lesson that can be applied to real life. Themes are usually more subtle in movies and novels. It's easy to be wowed by spaceships, aliens, and princesses, and those are essential parts of the Star Wars story. But to find the themes, we have to read between the lines. Well, not literally. We have to look for patterns or ideas that come up frequently. The repetition of a word or phrase is a good sign you're onto a theme. We call those recurring words or images motifs. The Force is one big motif in Star Wars. We learn more about its symbolic meaning each time it's mentioned. Well, like at the beginning, the Force seems to be just a magical power. But over the course of the series, we learn that it's much more than that. It's a universal energy that connects all living things, and a spiritual balance between light and darkness. Themes are often set up as pairs of opposing ideas, like with the Force. At its most basic level, it represents the struggle between good and evil, but it's also about nature versus technology, the tension between instinct and logic, or the choice between freedom and destiny. And they sound complicated, but those themes are all right there in the movie. We find them by analyzing the story elements. For example, we can examine lines of dialogue, what the characters say. Like when Darth Vader calls the Death Star a technological terror. Then he says the colossal weapon is nothing compared to the power of the Force. His comments set up technology and nature as opposing ideas. Plot, the action in a story, is another great place to hunt for themes. Okay, Moby-Wan, I will use the Force. I will trust my intuition. We did it, R2. We destroyed the Death Star. Right, Luke is successful because he relies on the Force. His natural instincts are victorious over destructive technology. Well, in a great story, all the elements work together to support the themes. Look at the settings in Star Wars, where the action takes place. The Death Star is massive and spotless. Like a lot of advanced technology, it feels sinister and cold. Compare that with the Rebels' ships. They look and feel lived in, like a home. Even the costumes support that contrast. Stormtroopers wear masks, and their uniforms are totally rigid. They look more like machines than people. Compare that to the Rebel outfits, what we good guys wear. Our clothing is loose, comfy, and made of organic materials. Well, appearance is a key part of characterization. That's all the ways a character is portrayed, how he looks, speaks, thinks, and acts. Remember when we first meet Moby-Wan? He lives a simple life, not surrounded by gizmos and gadgets. He's a respected Jedi Master, but unlike the bad guys, he's humble and has a sense of humor. Yeah, those themes really resonate in today's high-tech world. Anyway, let's get this place cleaned up. Dad's gonna be home soon. What? You are my father? No! 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 Visit us at brainpop.com for more on this topic and hundreds of others. You'll find movies, games, quizzes, and activities. Learn more about the difference BrainPop can make.
Your first theme practice for today is a short read. You have to identify the theme of the story. Your theme has to be in a complete sentence. It cannot include any characters' names within the theme. And it must be a complete lesson that someone or anyone in the world can use or apply at any point in time. We're going to do the two first exercises together. The third practice will be one counted for a grade. Blaine opened up the present and began pouting. He screamed in a high-pitched voice, "This is Captain Thunder! I wanted Captain Lightning!" His mother looked at him with dismay and handed him another present, which he greedily opened. "Why did you get me a red hat? You know I like blue more." Blaine whined as he threw the hat across the room. His mother straightened her expression and squinted at him. Earlier, she had hoped to take some pictures of this moment, but by now she had put away her camera. She sighed and handed him one more present in hopes that this year wouldn't be a total bust. Blaine huffed and opened it. "A Game Box 4000? Wow! Where's the Game Box 5000 that I asked for?" His mother could bear his ingratitude no longer. The next time that Blaine returned from his father's house, he was shocked to find all of these toys and gifts, along with many others of his things, had been generously donated to needy children. You need to focus on what is the theme of this story. Once you come up with a theme, you have to go back into the story and you have to find what happened in the story to give you that idea. Go ahead and pause at this time if you're watching the video and doing your lessons at home. Once you've finished, continue playing the video. There are a couple examples of theme for this story. 1, be happy with what you have, or be appreciative of what you get. Some text evidence. He's not happy with any kind of toys. The Captain Thunder, he's not happy with the Game Box 4000, he's not happy with the red hat. Those are all examples from the text that you can put in your work as saying, here's my evidence. We're going to continue with the second practice. Jimmy and Eric were huddled by the tire swing. Why did Scott have to take the kickball? He knows we play kickball at recess. Jimmy whined. Maybe we could just do something else, Eric suggested. No, I'm going to get our kickball, countered Jimmy. Scott was bouncing the kickball against the wall by himself when Jimmy approached him. Give us our kickball back, Scott! Jimmy shouted. Scott looked up and down at Jimmy and then continued bouncing the ball against the wall. Jimmy ran up to Scott and tried to snatch the ball as it passed from the wall back to Scott. But he was too slow. He missed and fell into the gravel and cried out, Ow! See what you did, Scott? By now, Eric had joined the other two boys and he made a suggestion. Hey, Scott, maybe we could play together. Scott looked at him skeptically, but Eric's warm expression convinced him of his sincerity. Okay, Scott muttered as he helped Jimmy back to his feet and asked, What do you want to play? The boys agreed on kickball and used the remaining recess time to play. Jimmy and Eric agreed that it was a lot more fun to play with 3 people, and Scott became a regular addition to their recess activities. You need to write your theme in a complete sentence. Do not use any characters' names, and it must be a lesson that anyone in the world can use. And for letter B, you need to go back in the text and you need to find out what gave you clues to this work. Go ahead and press pause at this time, and once you finish, go ahead and press play to continue your lesson. In this practice, theme could have been friends make things better, or friends are more fun when you have them have more to play with. My text evidence, playing by yourself is not as much fun. Playing with a group of friends is more fun. And it said in the text, directly from the text, that it was fun for the 3 people to play together. Our next activity that you're going to work on is the one that will be counted as a grade. Once I get done reading this assignment to you, I will not give you any examples of a possible theme or any examples of possible text evidence. This will need to be turned in today for your grade to prove what you did and that you're there in the classroom. It was Sean's first day at a new high school. Most of the students had been nice to him until he got into gym class. The coach had assigned 2 captains, Mike and Malik, and they were picking teams for the boys in Sean's class. As Mike and Malik made their picks, it became pretty clear to Sean who was popular and who was not. Since Sean was short for his age, Mike and Malik just assumed that Sean could not play basketball. As Mike and Malik's choices dwindled, Sean still remained amongst an ever-slimming pool of struggling athletes. Now, there were only 2 students left, Sean and another kid who seemed nice but was reading a book. Mike and Malik joked about who was going to get stuck with whom, and then Mike made his last pick. It was not Sean. Sean sighed and reluctantly joined Malik's team. As soon as the game began, Mike became aware of the error that he had made. Sean quickly stole the ball from him and ran it back for a layup. The new kid got lucky, Mike remarked, but it soon became clear that Sean had more going for him than luck. What Sean lacked in height, he made up for in speed, and he continued to dominate the action on the court for the remainder of the game. With Sean's blazing speed and crazy crossovers, Malik's team devastated Mike's, and that was the only time that Sean would be last pick at that high school. Independently, you need to create your own theme. What was the theme for this story? Remember not to use any characters' names. It must be a lesson that anyone around the world can use, and it must be in a complete sentence. That means a capital letter at the beginning and a period at the end. On letter B, what happens in the story that leads you to believe this? What text evidence did you find? You may pause the video if you need, and once you finish, you may continue your lessons by pressing play. Today you'll be reading a story called Me and Uncle Romie. In this story, we're going to read it out loud, and then you have to do 7 questions on your own. They must be answered in complete sentences, and you need to do your day 2 exit ticket, which is going to ask you the theme of this story. This story is a realistic fiction, which means the characters and events that are like real people, but some of the events and some of the characters may not have really been there. Some of those ideas may have been stretched. So pay close attention to Me and Uncle Romie by Claire Hartfield, illustrated by Jerome Lagarick. James waits nervously on a passenger train bound for New York City to visit Aunt Nanette and Uncle Romie. He's never met them before, and he's a little concerned. James has left behind his home in North Carolina, and though he misses his friend BJ, his dad, and his mom, who will soon have twin babies, James hopes he will soon have fun on this summer vacation, especially since it's his birthday coming up. Then I saw it. New York City, buildings stretching up to the sky, so close together. Not like North Carolina at all. Penn Station, watch your step, the conductor said, helping me down to the platform. I did like Daddy said and found a spot for myself close to the train. Swarms of people rushed by. Soon, I heard a silvery voice call my name. This had to be Aunt Nanette. I turned and saw her big smile reaching out to welcome me. She took my hand and guided me through the rushing crowds onto an underground train called the subway. This will take us right home, she explained. Home was nothing like I'd ever seen before. No regular houses anywhere, just big buildings and stores of all kinds. In the windows, I saw paints, fabrics, radios, and TVs. We turned into the corner building and climbed the stairs to the apartment. 5 whole flights up. Whew! I tried to catch my breath while Aunt Nanette flicked on the lights. Uncle Romie's out talking to some people about his big art show that's coming up. He'll be home soon, Aunt Nanette said. She set some milk and a plate of cookies for me on the table. Your uncle's working very hard, so we won't see much of him for a while. His workroom, we call it a studio, is in the front of our apartment. That's where he keeps all the things he needs to make his art. Doesn't he just paint? I asked. Uncle Romie is a collage artist, Aunt Nanette explained. He uses paints, yes, but also photographs, newspapers, cloth. He cuts and pastes them onto a board to make his paintings. That sounds kind of easy, I said. Aunt Nanette laughed. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, James. When you see the paintings, you'll understand. Come, let's get you to bed. Lying in the dark, I heard heavy footsteps in the hall. A giant stared at me from the doorway. Hello there, James. Uncle Romie's voice was deep and loud, like thunder. Thanks for the pepper jelly, he boomed. You have a good sleep now. Then he disappeared down the hall. The next morning, the door to Uncle Romie's studio was closed, but Aunt Nanette had plans for both of us. Today we're going to a neighborhood called Harlem, she said. It's where Uncle Romie lived as a boy. Harlem was full of people walking, working, shopping, eating. Some were watching the going-ons from fire escapes. Others were sitting on stoops greeting folks who passed by, just like the people back home calling out hellos from Aunt Nanette or from their porches. Most people seemed to know Aunt Nanette. A lot of them asked after Uncle Romie too. We bought peaches at the market, then stopped to visit for a while. I watched some kids playing stickball. Go on, get in the game, Aunt Nanette said, gently pushing me over to join them. When I was all hot and sweaty, we cooled off with double chocolate scoops from the ice cream man. Later, we shared some barbecue on a rooftop, way up high. I felt like I was on top of the world. As the days went by, Aunt Nanette took me all over the city. We rode a ferry boat to the Statue of Liberty, zoomed 102 floors up at the Empire State Building, window shopped the fancy stores on Fifth Avenue, gobbled hot dogs in Central Park. But it was Harlem that I liked best. I played stickball with the kids again. And on a really hot day, a whole bunch of us ran through the icy cold waters that sprayed out hard from the fire hydrant. In the evenings, Aunt Nanette and I sat outside listening to the street musicians playing their saxophone songs. On rainy days, I wrote postcards and helped out around the apartment. I told Aunt Nanette about the things I liked to do back home, about baseball games, train watching, my birthday. She told me about the special Caribbean lemon and mango cake she was going to make. My Uncle Romie stayed hidden away in his studio, but I wasn't worried anymore. Aunt Nanette would make my birthday special. 4, 3, 2, 1. My birthday was almost here. And then Aunt Nanette got a phone call. An old aunt had died, James. I have to go away for her funeral. But don't worry, Uncle Romie will spend your birthday with you. It'll be just fine. That night, Aunt Nanette kissed me goodbye. I knew it would not be fine at all. Uncle Romie didn't know about cakes or baseball games or anything except his dumb old paintings. My birthday was ruined. When the sky turned black, I tucked myself into bed. I miss Mama and Daddy so much. I listened to the birds on the rooftop. Their songs continued into the night. The next morning, everything was quiet. I crept out of bed and into the hall. For the first time, the door to Uncle Romie's studio stood wide open. What a glorious mess! There were paints and scraps all over the floor, and around the edges were huge paintings with all sorts of pieces pasted together. I saw saxophones, birds, fire escapes, and brown faces. It's Harlem, I thought. The people, the music, the rooftops, and the stoops. Looking at Uncle Romie's paintings, I could feel Harlem, its beat and bounce. Then there was one that was different. Smaller houses, flowers, and trains. That's home, I shouted. Yep, Uncle Romie said, smiling from the doorway. That's the Carolinas I remember. Mama said you visited your grandparents there most every summer when you were a kid, I said. I sure did, James. Now that's the place for pepper jelly, smeared thick on biscuits. When Grandma wasn't looking, I'd sneak some on a spoon. Daddy and I do that too, I told him. We laughed together and then walked to the kitchen for a breakfast feast. Eggs, bacon, grits, and biscuits. James, you got me remembering the pepper jelly lady. People used to line up down the block to buy her preserves. Could you put someone like that in one of your paintings? I asked. I guess I could, Uncle Romie nodded. Yes, that's a memory just right for sharing. What a good idea, James. Now let's get this birthday going. He brought out 2 presents from home. I tore into the packages while he got down the pepper jelly and 2 huge spoons. Mom and Daddy had picked out just what I wanted, a special case for my baseball cards and a model train for me to build. Pretty cool, said Uncle Romie. I used to watch the trains down in North Carolina, you know. How funny to picture big Uncle Romie lying on his belly. BJ and me have a contest to see who can hear the trains first. Hey, I did that too. You know, it's a funny thing, James. People live in all sorts of different places and in families. But the things we care about are pretty much the same, like favorite foods, special songs, games, stories, and like birthdays. Turns out Uncle Romie knows all about baseball. He was even a star pitcher in college. We got our mitts and set off for the game. Way up in the bleachers, we shared a bag of peanuts, cracking the shells with our teeth and keeping our mitts ready in case a home run ball came our way. That didn't happen, but we sure did have fun. Aunt Nanette came home that night. She lit the candles and we all shared my Caribbean birthday cake. After that, Uncle Romie had to work a lot again, but at the end of the day, he let me sit with him in his studio and talk. Daddy was right. Uncle Romie is a good man. The next day the big art show finally came. I watched the people laughing and talking, walking slowly around the room, from painting to painting. I walked around myself, listening to their conversations. Remember our first train ride from Chicago to New York? One lady asked her husband. That guitar playing man reminds me of my Uncle Joe, says another. All these strangers talking to each other about their families and friends and special times, and all because of how my Uncle Romie's paintings reminded them of these things. Later that night, Daddy called. I had a brand new brother and sister. Daddy said they were both bald and made a lot of noise. But he sounded happy and said they all missed me. This time, Aunt Nanette and Uncle Romie took me to the train station. Here's a late birthday present for you, James, Uncle Romie said, holding out a package. Open it on the train, why don't you? It'll help pass the time on the long train ride. I waved out the window to Uncle Romie and Aunt Nanette until I couldn't see them anymore. Then I ripped off the wrappings, and there was my summer in New York. Bright sky in one corner, city lights at night in another, tall buildings, baseball ticket stubs, the label from the pepper jelly jar, and trains. One going toward the skyscrapers, another going away. Back home, I lay in the soft North Carolina grass. It was the 1st of September, almost Uncle Romie's birthday. I watched the birds streak across the sky. Rooftop birds, I thought. Back home from their summer in New York, just like me. Watching them, I could still feel the city's beat inside my head. A feather drifted down from the sky, and the garden tiger lilies bent in the wind, Uncle Romie's favorite flowers. I yanked off a few blossoms, and then I was off on a treasure hunt, collecting things that reminded me of Uncle Romie. I painted and pasted them together on a big piece of cardboard. Right in the middle, I put the train schedule, and at the top, I wrote, Happy birthday, Uncle Romie. Author's notes. This story, which is fictional, was inspired by the storytelling quality of Romare Bearden's art and has incorporated many of the basic facts of his life. Romare Bearden was born in Charlotte, North Carolina on September 2nd, 1911. He spent his early childhood in Charlotte, and even after he moved north, spent many summers there. When he was still a child, his family moved to Harlem and New York City. This was during the 1920s, a period called the Harlem Renaissance, when many famous African American writers, musicians, and artists lived and worked in Harlem. Bearden often sat out on the stoop of his apartment building, listening to music, getting to know his neighbors, and taking in the scene. In 1954, Bearden married Nanette Rowan, whose family is from the Caribbean island of St. Martin. As Bearden grew to be a young man, he chose painting to express the African American experience as he knew it. He experimented with many different ways of painting, finally deciding that collage was the best form for expressing his ideas. Many of his paintings are on exhibit in the museums and galleries across the United States. His work has also appeared in several children's books. In 1987, Romare Bearden was awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Ronald Reagan. Bearden died on March 12, 1988. After reading the assignment today, you need to answer the 7 questions that go with the reading, Me and Uncle Romie. I'll read each question to you, and I'll give any explanation that you may need for each question. So please make sure we pay close attention to answer each part of every question in complete sentences. What is the text evidence that James is unfamiliar with big city life? Think close to the beginning of the story. What are some clues that let you know that James is unfamiliar or not sure about big city life? Number 2, what kind of person is James's uncle? What details from the text help you understand them? You need to give me specific details from the text, and your answers need to be in complete sentences. Number 3, who is telling the story? How do you know? I need you to look back in the story and give a good idea about who's telling the story based on some very specific clues. And tell me on the how do you know part, those are the clues I need you to put in your answer. Number 4, how can you tell that James is starting to feel more comfortable with Uncle Romie? I need specific details from the text, and I need complete sentences for all of your answers for these 7 questions. Number 5, how is pepper jelly important in the relationship between Uncle Romie and James? Look back in the text if you need to, and I need complete sentences and specific details. Number 6, what does Uncle Romie say about people? Think back in the text. Think about when he's with James. If you can't find it, they're together when that is said, and I need you to give me specific details from the text and complete sentences to answer this question. And finally, question number 7. What interests do James and his uncle share? What do they both like? Please don't just give me one, because the word interests means more than one. When you do this assignment for number 7, go back in the text, at least give me 2 or more ways of James and his uncle have something they both like. Your day 2 exit ticket. What is the theme of Me and Uncle Romie? And then I need you to tell me what are your details from the reading that helped you come up with this answer. Your theme needs to be a complete sentence without the character's name, and it must be a lesson that anyone can use. And also your details need to be from the text. Your final part that you need to do is in your work packet. You have 15 words to focus on. With these 15 words, you need to put them in ABC order. You also have time to work on Mayan, which will count for your independent reading and your guided reading. There are books already there for March 31st, 2020 for you to read. For independent reading, you can call a friend up on the phone if you like. You may read with a parent, and you can choose a book to read with them. Also, as a reminder, your iReady reading and iReady math minutes. You need at least 45 minutes by the end of the week. Make sure you take time each day to work on your iReady reading and your iReady math minutes. At the very end of your work packet, there is a writing assignment. Sometime this week, you need to make sure you work on that writing assignment because it will be due on Friday. And the final part, you do have social studies that is due on this Friday that will be counted as a grade. If you look under the social studies, you will see that posted there for you. You may download it, and everything there you can type directly onto the document. You do not have to print it out. Just type in the text boxes. If there's questions it's asking you to do and there's no text box, then you do not have to do those questions. You only have to do the ones with text boxes for you to type into. Good luck on day 2 of week 2 e-learning. If you have any questions, please message me on Edsby or through email. Thank you.